Today, for the very first time, I'm listening to the brand new Zeromancer album, Orchestra of Knives. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel for another album review / reaction. I've been having a lot of fun with my last few videos doing some really important albums to me. I recently did We Butter the Bread with Butter's new album, Das Album, and then also the brand new and awesome debut album from the band Spirit Box. And in both of those videos, I mentioned sort of some of the things I had coming up, and here we are. And I am on to the new as of a couple weeks ago, I believe, the brand new Zeromancer album. But I'll get more to that in a second. First, I want to say, if you've never seen any of my album reviews like this before on my channel, know that basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hit play at the beginning of the album. I'm going to listen all the way through from the front to back, listening for the very first time and giving you my thoughts in real time as I'm hearing the album for the very first time, like I said. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep watching. If you don't really care about my reactions to the songs, but you'd like to know what I think of it overall, at the end of the video, after I'm done listening to the album, I will do my overall thoughts of the album, more of a review, if you will. So in the description of this video, you will notice that I included timestamps throughout the whole video, including individual tracks. If you have a favorite track you'd like to hear my reaction on, you can skip to that. Or like I said, if you want to skip to the very end and just hear my overall thoughts on the album, feel free to do that as well. Also in the description of this video, you'll notice I included a link to listen along with me on Spotify. I think that's probably the best way to experience this video, is to listen along with me. I have never done a video yet where I've had to pause, though in this video, because I'm going to be using my tablet, I will probably have to edit out some moments of ads and things like that because I only have the free version of Spotify. But I will try to edit it in such a way that if you're listening along with me, you should be able to just hit play and then listen along through the whole album with me without having to worry about lining any songs up or anything like that. And as we're going through, I will try to tell you, like, we're on track 2, track 3, if I remember that, depending on what I'm talking about. Also, the last few videos I've done, I've gotten a few comments that people are saying that I'm talking a little bit too much during the music. So for this video in particular, I'm going to try to do a little bit more listening and sort of comment on what I'm hearing. There is a way that I do these videos that I am comfortable with, and for the most part, I think most people who watch my videos, which I am still a very small channel. If you're new here, thank you very much for watching the video, but I am still a very small channel, but I do have a way that I kind of like to do things. But for this video in particular, I'm going to try to keep in mind to not talk as much over the music so I can try to experience it a little bit more. And I will try to save any sort of bigger thoughts that I have for afterwards. So I may end up with a little bit longer album review than normal, but we'll just kind of see what happens. Maybe all of that will fly out of my brain once I start, actually listening to the album, and I'll just revert to my old ways. And if that's the case, then hey, it's what I'm comfortable doing. But regardless, just know I'm going to be trying to listen a little bit more this time. We'll see what happens. If the album is terrible the entire way through, I'll probably be talking the whole time about how awful it is. If it's fantastic, like I hope it's going to be, I'll be talking about it in that regard. Another thing that I want to mention is that I will not be including any audio from the actual album in this video because I don't want to get a copyright strike and I don't want to take anything away from Zeromancer as an artist. So that's, again, why the link is down there to listen along with me. So with all of that in mind, I do want to talk a little bit about why I like Zeromancer so much and why I'm hopeful that this album could be really, really, really good. So first of all, I'll say I discovered Zeromancer after their second album, Eurotrash, I believe? Yes, Eurotrash came out. And I very vividly can remember I walked into the store that I used to buy a lot of my music at and that I ended up working at, actually, years after this event I'm going to talk about in a second here. Years after this event happened, I ended up working at the store, Hastings Entertainment, for anybody who's in the know for that. But I remember being at Hastings, which is a store that sold many different things, but they had a big music section. And I remember walking through looking at the CDs, which I did all the time, always looking for new bands, new albums, new music. And I saw this album in the store, and I remember picking it up and looking at it and reading the sticker. And the sticker that was on the front said 9 Inch Nails meets Rob Zombie. And I thought, that sounds like an awesome combination. I really want that. So the next time I went to Hastings, I ended up buying the album, and that's how I got this exact copy of this album. And I can remember that so clearly. I can remember the exact pocket in the sort of like setup that they had all the CDs. I can remember the pocket. I can remember flipping through. I can remember seeing it and lifting it out. It's a very vivid memory in my mind. And so that was how I discovered Zeromancer. So after enjoying this album a lot, which I really do, and I'm going to talk about this album a little bit more, then I went backwards and I got their debut album, Clone Your Lover. And then from there, I've been a fan. So that's sort of like, I've always enjoyed Zeromancer, but I do think that their albums are, I don't want to say they're hit or miss because I do enjoy the songwriting throughout, but I think some of the mixing on the albums is actually pretty bad. And I don't know if it's necessarily mixing or mastering, but to explain a little bit more about what I'm talking about, I think what I'm going to do is go through their albums real quick and talk about some of the pluses and minuses on them. So for their first album, Clone Your Lover, I like this album a lot. It feels a little bit like a first album, but they do have some really big songs on here. Something for the Pain was a big song that at the time, I think there was a remix of that song on a compilation that I had at one point or another. So I think that I have heard a remix of that song, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't just on here. There is an Apoptygma Berserk remix of that song on this album. But House of Cards, the last song on the album, is really good, and I remember liking that one a lot. That song is a little bit different from the rest of the songs on the album. It's a little bit more electronic-y, and it's a slow, more like a ballad, but there's these big sort of like chuggier moments in it, and more like the heavy guitar comes in. But I remember listening to these two albums, which I consider to be kind of similar. I remember listening to them, and I did think at the time, like, oh, this is very similar of the music that was popular at the time in the sort of heavy genre. There are elements of sort of like Rob Zombie. There's elements of Nine Inch Nails, of course. It reminded me of things like The Kidney Thieves or Static X, like I said earlier. Also things like Gravity Kills, which is a band I liked at the time as well, and Stabbing Westward as well. So it kind of reminded me of a lot of that. There was a lot of synth elements, a lot of keyboard elements. The vocalist had a very particular style of singing that was very much of that sort of like Stabbing Westward, very emotional, kind of almost bordering on he had like just a way of singing, I guess, like a style that was very uniquely his. And he sings with that style on all of the Zeromancer albums. But like I said, it reminded me a lot of stuff at the time that was very much a contemporary of when these albums came out. And I like both of them a lot. I think that Eurotrash is probably, production-wise, their best sounding album. The drums, the guitars, the bass, especially the synths, the vocals, everything sounds really good. The vocals on the album, they do this trick, not really a trick, but a lot of the vocals on this album are spread wide. So the singer did a double take of the song, like 2 takes, and then they would pan them wide to make it feel wide. However, the lead vocal of the songs always sits in the middle. And so what they do is they play a lot with the widening and the narrowing of the vocals in terms of the stereo spectrum. So there's vocals in the middle, there's vocals wide. When the choruses come in and the songs get bigger, the guitars, everything comes in, the song gets heavier. There's more layers of vocals that can be in all 3 of those places, not just the left and the right and the middle, but just all 3 of those together. So there's a lot of really good production stuff on this album, and it's very crisp and clear and clean. And the low moments, in terms of the low energy moments, are nice and they feel ballady. My favorite song on the album is called Cupola, and that song is, I think, in my opinion, maybe the best Famous Last Words is a fantastic song, but I think Cupola might be my favorite or second favorite of all Zeromancer songs. And I love that song. It starts very slow and it builds, and then the guitars and the drums come in, and it's this nice build that that sort of explodes, and then it comes back a little, and then it just kind of explodes, and it keeps going, keeps going. It does fade out, which is a huge bummer to me. And for people who are familiar with my channel, you'll know that I absolutely cannot stand it when songs fade out. So I hope on Orchestra of Knives, the new album, there's not a lot of songs that fade out. But that's not something that Zeromancer has done a lot throughout their catalog. But I do think that this album, and I want to stress this again, this album I think is their best sounding album production-wise and mastering-wise. Like I said, the quiet moments are quiet, the loud parts are loud when everything kicks in. You know, the song Raising Hell is really cool. It kind of builds. There's a few sections that last like double the length. The pre-chorus lasts like double the length of a pre-chorus normally would. And then the song kicks in and it feels big, and the drums feel big, and it feels like you're sort of exploding, and that's really cool, and it's earned in that song because the song goes ups and downs in terms of energy level, and that's really nice. And the reason that I bring that up is because as Zeromancer got along in their catalog, unfortunately, I feel like sorry, my table's squeaking. As Zeromancer got along further in their career, I feel like the production of the albums went down. So on their next album, which is actually my favorite overall Zeromancer album, this is Zzyx, or ZZYZX. I love this album. I think it's great. The songs are very well written. It's a lot more down-tempo and chill than their two previous albums. And there's no moment really that explodes. And one of the reasons for that is because it was mixed a lot less dynamically. Almost everything that you're hearing in the mix is the same level. So if the guitars come in, they're there, but instead of having it be this giant, massive guitar sound where all of a sudden, suddenly the whole song feels like it's thickened and it's grown maybe a little bit in volume, when the guitars come in, all you're doing is hearing the guitars. They're at the same level as everything else that you had been hearing in the song up to that point. Whether it was the cool synth bass lines or synth lines or just the drums and bass or whatever happened in the song up to when the guitars would come in, there wasn't much dynamics to it. However, I still do think that this album is mixed really well. And I think over their entire catalog, it's the best written songs are all on ZZYZX. So after that album, they released, I think I was reading online a little bit in their sort of biography on Wikipedia, and there isn't a ton of information on their wiki page. So, you know, usually with bands, I tend to try to do research on the members of the band and things like that. And the only thing I really know about Zeromancer in terms of their members is that sort of the guy that's sort of like the guy in the band, his name is Eric Lejeune, I believe. And he is bass player, I think, backup vocalist, and I believe sort of the primary songwriter for Zeromancer, and sort of the common thread that runs through all of this. But I was really excited because I found out that he and other members from Zeromancer were in a band way before Zeromancer called Sigmen, I believe. I do not speak Norwegian, which is the country that Zeromancer is from. But they were in apparently a very, very important Norwegian band called Sigmen, which I had never heard of before. And upon listening to and investigating a little bit on Spotify, I found out that there's some cool elements they have that they share with Zeromancer, and they have released albums since Zeromancer became a band. So they were sort of running concurrently alongside Zeromancer, which is very nice. It's exciting for me to know that I can go all the way back to 1996 when their first album came out, I believe, and experience a new band by sort of the same singer and songwriters of this band. And then I also found out that the Eric Lejeune guy, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, that he also has his own sort of side project called Youngblood or something like that. Youngblood, I assume it is. Lejeune Blood. And that project seems like it's kind of like a Zeromancer-y, a little Sigmen-y, but it's a little bit more sort of introspective, more acoustic-based. But I also, in listening to samples of some stuff, heard a lot of cool synth pads and synth parts. So I'm actually excited to listen to that as well. And if my ears deceive me, which they may be, I believe the same person sings on all three of these projects. So that's very exciting to me to know that I have two whole bands with a giant history of their own that I was completely unaware of until I started doing research for this video to go back and experience. So that's very exciting. But after they released this album, I read that they took a little hiatus and they ended coming back with the album Sinners International. And this is where you get to see a little bit of a disappointment, I think, in the sort of production. This album went back to being a little bit more dynamic in terms of the range than Zizek's, but not quite to the level of polish and professional production that we got on their two previous albums, their first two albums. So this album feels a little bit looser. The guitars don't necessarily sound as good, in my opinion. I don't think that they were necessarily recorded as well. However, in contrast to the less dynamic Zizek's, this album is more dynamic, like I said. So when the guitars do come in, you really do feel it. It's not just this sort of wall of sound that starts at the beginning of a song and continues all the way through. So then we get to their two albums that came out after. Obviously, all of these. I'm trying to go sort of in sequential order here. We get to The Death of Romance, which unfortunately is the album that I probably listen to the least and the one that sort of stays with me the least. And then we have Bye Bye Borderline, which is their most recent album up until this new album, Orchestra of Knives. And these two albums, the last night, actually, I went through and I listened to little samples of songs from each of these. I actually put the CD in my CD player and I listened to little bits to try to sort of gather my thoughts on the production, because that's what I knew I wanted to talk about with this video. These two albums, and in particular Bye Bye Borderline, is either mixed really poorly or it's mastered. I think probably it was the mastering very, 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 very poorly. Bye Bye Borderland is one of the worst examples of overcompression that I've ever heard on any album. And when I say overcompression, I don't mean using compression as an effect like a sidechain compressor. You don't listen to this and hear like the cymbals, for example, or anything sort of like overly compressing when the kick is hitting or when the bass is playing, for example, which are two very common techniques to use when you're editing music. But what you hear when you listen to this, each of these individual songs, it is just a barfing out of sound that is the exact same level with absolutely zero dynamic range the entire time. A lot of the songs on this album, they start really cool. There's like a neat little sort of synth bass line or a synth part that's going, and then the drums kick in, and the drums aren't very massive sounding or anything like that. They're just very much in the pocket of what's happening with the sound, and then the vocals come in, and it all sounds like it's sort of the same volume, and it's building, and you can feel it's building, and then the chorus kicks in, and the guitars and the extra vocal layers come in, and it's all just the exact same. It is a flat line, and it is incredibly disappointing. Just incredibly disappointing. I think I really enjoy the songs on Bye Bye Borderland a lot more than The Death of Romance, and I actually enjoy the songs on Bye Bye Borderland significantly more than Sinners International as well. But because like I said, when I listen to it, I have a somewhat trained ear, but not necessarily I am sort of a professional audio engineer and mixing engineer and thing like that. I have not worked on any projects remotely as impactful or important as any of this, but I have worked on music projects before. And when I listen to this, it sounds to me like it was just smashed and compressed to all hell. And I don't know if it was done in the mastering or if it's the way that it was mixed. I do definitely hear similarities in the way that Zizek's, or ZZYZX, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to say that these three albums, Zizek's, Bye Bye Borderland, and The Death of Romance, these three albums have a very similar feel to the way that they are mixed and the way that they sound, and the sort of lack of super high frequencies, and the sort of more like almost every sound feels like it was run through some sort of a tape machine or tape emulator or digital distortion effect, and that what it did was just make everything feel like it was on the exact same plane of volume. If you're not aware of the kind of things that I'm talking about, it can probably be hard to understand. But really, seriously, go listen to a song from Eurotrash. Pick any of the songs. Listen to it. Close your eyes and listen to the sounds that you're hearing. And when the guitars kick in during the chorus, feel how the song feels like it's getting bigger. Feels like there's moments, notice how it feels like there are moments where there are things blooming, that the sound is moving. You know, think of the energy in the song. If there's supposed to be low energy in the song, is the song a little bit quieter? Are the sounds that you're hearing a little bit more intimate? And when the song's supposed to be huge, are the sounds louder? Does the whole thing sort of be perceived as being louder or more, not necessarily more chaotic, but more dynamic? And that's really the word. Listen to a song from here and then listen to a song from Bye Bye Borderland, and it is a night and day difference. This is professional sounding. This is the thing that frustrates me so much about it is when you listen to it, you can tell all the sounds that they're putting into these songs are great. All the vocals are performed great. Everything is performed great. All the synth basses they're using, all the sort of different keyboard parts, the different sort of samples, the different production elements, all of the sounds that are going into this album and this album and this album, to an extent, all the sounds are great. They're all done by professional musicians who know what they're doing. And I don't know if it's in the process of mixing the music themselves or whatever they were doing. They made it very compressed sounding, which is possible to do during mixing. But I think the more likely scenario is they made the song sound as good as they could. They sent it to their guy to master it, and their mastering engineer just smashed it to crap. I'm a little hesitant to say that I'm sure that that's what happened because again I don't hear a ton of overcompression in regard to like hearing sounds come in and then having other sounds get quieter when those other sounds come in. That's not something that really happens too much. It's just a giant solid wall of sound with no dynamicism, no dynamics to it whatsoever. So with all that said, you're probably watching this video because you like Zeromancer and because you like maybe the lyrical content of their songs. You're a fan of, you know, maybe the Siegman or Youngblut or however, I'm sorry how you pronounce that. And you're just here to experience the album with me. And I'm really, really, really super excited for this because I hope that this album sounds, the sonic quality of it, the dynamic range of it, is significantly better than the last few Zeromancer albums. I do not expect this album to sound like a Rob Zombie album or a Nine Inch Nails album or anything like that, like they sort of claimed to be when they were a younger band. I don't expect it to sound like this. I will be really happy if this album sounds on par with ZZYZX. I think that's their best album. Again, I think that their album before that, Eurotrash, is their best sounding album, but you know, we'll just kind of see what happens. So that also leads me to another thing I wanted to mention, which was I do not have the CD copy of this album. In the United States, to get a copy of the CD, I think it will cost me at least $25 to $30, which may not sound like a lot to everybody, but I am incredibly poor and I have to use my money where I feel like it makes the most sense. And I could spend $30 on one Zeromancer album that may end up disappointing me, like their last few albums have, or I could buy 3 $10 CDs or 2 $15 CDs, and in my opinion, that's a better use of my money. But that's neither here nor there. I have chosen to do my reaction to this video, listen to this album, and I hope that I like this album so much that I want to purchase the album, and I will go then and do that. And if it's worth $30, I will spend the $30 and get it if I can find a copy somewhere. If it's not worth $25, $30, I'll wait, see if I can find it cheaper if that's what I think it deserves. And if it's a disappointing album to me, I probably will just maybe listen to it every now and then when I want to on Spotify, if I choose to go that route. So that's why I don't have the CD. Usually with these videos, I like to have the CD. I like to look through the liner notes of the album, show you the artwork and all that stuff. But in this case, I don't have that. All I'll do is right now I'll just throw the front of the album cover image up here for a few seconds, and that's basically all it's going to be. So with all that out of the way, you know my thoughts on Zeromancer. I didn't really get too much into the things that I do like and don't like about them regarding the music. I personally really like it when their songs are a little bit more catchy and they have catchy choruses that could be sung along with. And a lot of their songs are like that. Some of them aren't. I think that Sinners International, to me, was sort of the biggest letdown in terms of songs and actual songwriting. Even though I think it has better production than Bye Bye Borderland or even Death of Romance, I think that Death of Romance and Bye Bye Borderland were much more well-written songs. So I will not be disappointed if this album is not heavy, because that's not really what I'm expecting. I know enough about Zeromancer to know that they don't just do heavy songs like they did for Eurotrash. So that's not what I'm expecting. So, with all of that in mind, let's get to the actual playing of this bad boy. To let you know, in case you're wondering what's going on here, I have a little cable that I hook up to my tablet, then hook up to my, let's be just a headphone extender, basically, because I have issues with my headphone and the connector that's on the end getting the signal all the way through fully. So, because I am using this extra purple cable here, if I refer to something as being on the left, that actually means it's on the right, because these cables I ordered off of Amazon, they were very cheap, and unbeknownst to me, until a couple weeks after I got them and was listening to things, I found out that it actually reverses the stereo image. So I'll try to keep that in mind, but if I say, ooh, something's on the right, it is actually something that's probably on the left. So with all that said, I only have the free version of Spotify, so if I get some ads here, I'll just edit them out of the video. It'll be a quick little thing like that, and hopefully it won't be that big of a deal. But I'm hoping right away at the beginning here that I end up getting a 30-minute ad, or not a 30-minute ad, but an ad, and then 30 minutes of free music to listen to. So we'll see what's going to happen. I'm going to hit play right now, and we will just kind of go from there. So please join me. Here we go. This is Orchestra of Knives by the band Zeromancer, their first album since 2013. So their first album in 8 years. I'm very excited. Let's see what we can get from this. So track 1, Testimonial. Okay, I'm getting an ad, Geico ad at the moment, for 30 minutes of uninterrupted listening. So when I snap my fingers, the first track will be starting. Ready? Okay, this is Testimonial. Okay, some nice drum pattern going on. Everything low pass, filter, low passed. Some synths kind of going. I like the sort of, I'm getting bum bum ba bum bum ba bum ba bum bum, getting vibes. That's cool. Okay, very low volume vocals. Everything at this point is supposed to be sounding, I assume, lo-fi. So I'm looking forward to the point where everything kind of comes up and we get the high frequencies all coming in. Same vocals that I remember. Love the singer. Okay, we have a little bit more high frequency in the drums now. Interesting, sort of like a bongo sound on the, what would be your left. I don't know if it's a bongo so much as like a synth that had some frequency. Okay. Love the vocal rhythm. We're still getting that ba-dum dum ba-dum da-dum dum ba-dum da-dum dum feel. Ooh. Oh, cool. One of the other things I was going to mention on Bye Bye Borderland, the guitars were almost non-existent in terms of, I don't know if there were really actually any real guitars on the album that were doing like crunchy heavy stuff. All the guitars were doing the sort of arpeggiated broken chords. So far, I haven't really heard any guitars on this track. Okay, it's building a little. Okay, the chorus has a swear word in it, which, for those of you who are familiar with my channel, know I'm not the biggest fan of swearing in music, but I think if you're going to do it all the way. Don't just skirt around it. I don't think it's necessary really ever, but it's not something that ruins any song for me or anything. But okay, we're at 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The song sort of sounds like it kind of ended. This kind of almost feels to me more like it is a intro song. Okay, we get the drums coming back in. Love the drum sounds. Sounds like a sort of a real drum kit. I'm sure it was all replaced, but it sounds good. Ooh, nice low frequencies there. So now we have some guitars in there. Love it. Ba 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 da ba da da ba 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 da da da. Very cool feeling. Vocals come back. You know, Zeromancer, one of their sort of defining characteristics has been a bit more of an industrial sound. And that has changed how the industrial part side of them has influenced them in their songwriting over their different albums. Certainly a lot differently on Eurotrash than it was on Bye Bye Borderland. I keep mentioning the synth basses and things like that. That's sort of like a defining character. So I'm anxious to see what sort of industrial elements we hear. Because when they first started, bands were using synths in sort of a different way than they are now. Nowadays, it's not looked at as being sort of odd for a band to have a synth player, a keyboard player. So we'll see what happens. Nice. That was a nice song. There was only the chorus was only done twice, I believe. So structuring a little bit different. Okay. Ooh, that's cool. So we have some synth stuff going with a real bass guitar playing a bass line. That's nice. This album does feel a lot more dynamic to me. It actually sounds very good. So I think I don't need to worry about the overcompression at all, which is really nice. We're 30 seconds into the song Damned Le Monde. That's cool to hear him going, hello, hello, because it kind of harkens back to Cologne, 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 your lover. Ooh, okay. See, we're getting sounds now that sound like guitars, but I'm not 100% positive that they are guitars. Kind of as I mentioned, Zeromancer, on a bunch of their albums, they would do a lot of, like, almost every sound you were hearing sounded like it was distorted at least a little bit, or run through some sort of like a tape filter or a tape emulator almost. And maybe that happened because the mastering engineer ran everything, another swear word in this song, so that's 2 for 2. But we're in the chorus of this song. I love this. This is great. What I was saying, though, was if the mastering engineer ran the whole entire stereo track through some sort of a filter, that could give everything the effect. But Zeromancer uses a lot of distortion. I believe digital distortion on a lot of sound effects, synth pads, piano, things like that. And so sometimes it's hard to hear or hard to distinguish what you're listening to if it's a acoustically created sound on an instrument or electric guitar, something like that, or if it is a synthetic sound that was created, you know, using a patch, and then the patch was distorted or messed with, effects added to it on a keyboard. Doesn't matter where the sounds are coming from if they serve the song, and that's cool. But one thing I love about what I'm hearing here is that along with the extra dynamics that this has, it feels a lot more loose. But like the drums sound like they're real drums, the bass sounds like a real bass guitar, and the guitars sound like real electric guitars, and that's nice. Now, I also, like I said, I know I am listening to probably 192, at the most 256 kilobit MP3s off of Spotify for free. So I know I am not hearing the highest quality version of this album that's available, but I'm just keeping that in mind, and I'm not going to talk too much about the, the lack of high frequencies or anything like that. I know how my headphones react to different frequencies and things when I'm listening to music that I know is done very well. So I'll try to kind of adjust my thinking there. Okay, there's a lot of different parts going on here. Some polyrhythms sort of stuff on the... Okay, is that the end of the song? So if that's the case, this song also only had 2 choruses as well. So that's interesting. Now, the song was still 4 minutes long. Track 3, right now. Transparency. Having a mono signal there kind of moving around. I can still hear it kind of going around. There's some neat sort of like gravelly sounds in there that is constant, sort of like white noise, gravelly white noise. That's very nice. Building, frequency sweep. Okay. All right, now we have, this is very much reminding me of ZZYZX with that guitar. The not incredibly distorted guitar playing, almost sort of like clean electric guitar with a lot of reverb on it. Very nice. Such an interesting and unique timbre to his voice. I really, really enjoy that. Ooh, nice. Those synths are really cool. Nice vocal overdub there as well. Okay. This almost sounds like Interpol or something a little bit, which is very nice. I did read on their wiki page that there was a quote that they had said about how they don't ever want to make the same song twice. And I can really appreciate that. I think that it's one thing to never want to make the same song twice, though, and another thing to want to sort of have callbacks to your previous music. And I like it when a band can do that. But I don't necessarily want a band to repeat themselves, and I never had a problem with the fact that their music hasn't really been as heavy as it was on Eurotrash. I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed ZZYZX, and I enjoy this too, and it's very different sounding. This is feeling almost a little bit like 90s almost to me, with the way it's mixed and the rawness of the drums, the realness of the drums, the sort of not overly distorted and fuzzed out electric guitars. And his vocal style as well. Like I said, Stabbing Westward, I think, is a great band to compare them to. Both very unique and interesting bands that vastly changed their sound over time, too. But interesting to keep that in mind. Ooh, very cool. That sound effect or whatever on the right side, my left, your right, very cool. Track 3, all 3 songs have had swear words in them. I like how they're willing to drop everything out. And like right now, we just have some nice little electric guitar part in there. Nice. You can really hear the snares while the kick is hitting, and that is one thing that tells me that it's probably the real sounds from the real drum kit. That, or there was so much room tone that when they're hitting the snare, there's a gate on it. Or hitting the kick, there's a gate. Okay, so this song does not have a third chorus. They just kind of, the bridge of the song, when it got to the bridge, it got quiet, and then they did a few little things, and then it was done. So that's interesting. Track 4, right here, Mourners. I mentioned the structuring now almost every song. Or I am a stickler for ABA, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, bridge, chorus out. I don't care if you have extra sections in there, but I like it when all songs, you don't have to have it that specific song structure, but I like it when you come back to the chorus at the end of the song. And I'm not going to get too much into that. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on structuring, you can listen to my We Butter the Bread with Butter and especially my Spirit Box album review that I just did on my channel. Okay, we have a low-passed vocal again. Vocals in the middle. There's almost no high end in it, so it's sort of supposed to sound sort of lo-fi at this point. Nice synth bass part here. We have some synths kind of going around. Oh, that was a cool little sound. Very industrial sound there. That sort of scratchy thing almost. Okay, now everything's back in. Okay, we have 4 to the floor electronic kick. Very cool. This is cool. These are very hopeful sounding chords that I'm hearing. Nice. I love this. Okay. Still very much feels like an electronic song, and I enjoy that. I wonder if the song's going to stay like this the whole time, or will it get bigger? Will the drum kit come in? I don't know. I love it when a band has as much enough versatility within them and their core of their sound, where you can have a song like this, where there is no drum kit playing the drums. It's just electronic drums. But the first 3 tracks on this album were a drum kit playing the drums. That's very cool. I love that. Okay. That's very cool sound. Some distorted, like, sounds someone's tweaking a knob there, turning an actual knob to get frequency sweeps and things like that with a little distortion on them. Okay, vocal a little bit off to the right. Your right, my left. Programmed hi-hat, right in the middle. Okay, the vocals are back. Okay, now we have guitar. Some played keyboards, you can tell. Love that. There's Depeche Mode in this, which I really enjoy a lot. Depeche Mode, one of my favorite bands. Okay. Okay, chorus 2. Love the guitars. Like I said, this feels very hopeful, which is a different feeling than the 2 previous songs. Nice little variation on the drum beat there. That's nice. See, this is mixed much nicer compared to a lot of their catalog. Much more dynamic, and that's nice. I'm very grateful to that. I was really... So again, only 2 choruses there. That's very interesting. I wonder how they're structuring... Okay, I think track 5 we're on now. I lost count. I don't have the track listing in front of me. We're now on Birthday. This song's very short compared to the 4 previous ones. So we have an electronic kick again. Nice reverb behind it, like gated reverb to make it sound realistic, kind of, but it's electronic. And the patch that they have going on the synths there, that's very nice. You can hold a button down and there's like a moving effect on the patch, but you can change the notes. Very cool. This song's got a little bit more of a gothic-y feel to it. Very cool. Ooh. Oh, that, like the clicking sound there going across the stereo spectrum. Very Depeche Mode. Very cool. Very creepy. Love it. Interesting to have this song following the previous song, being that this is sort of the same kind of thing. Electronic 4 to the floor. This song feels a little slower, and it doesn't feel hopeful like the previous song did. Much more ominous. Vocals great again. Low passed again. Okay. This is feeling nice and 90s. Industrial sort of electronic industrial 90s. Very cool. Okay, we're building. Okay. A distorted synth lead. So all we've had so far is 1 verse. Okay, now we have some real snare, some real drums kicking in. Or what sounds like real drums. The cymbals don't really sound very real to me, so that might mean that it's all programmed, just very well programmed with good samples. So I don't know if I should call this a chorus or what, but the song's almost over, so that song had no discernible repeating parts whatsoever. None. The whole song felt like it was sort of repetitive, like it didn't change very much. Now we're on Terminal Love. But structuring of that song felt like a transition song to me because it wasn't structured normally. Very nice. Very Depeche Mode. The vocals very crisp and clear, nice reverb on them. Swelling on the side, okay, adding a layer to the synth bass. I love the sort of the sound that's building up. Okay. Yes. Okay, and the guitar palm muted. Jung 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 jung. Very nice. Very subtle, very simple. Okay. Okay. Nice. That tambourine is really nice, adding to the thickness. And I hear multiple layers of tambourine, or at least other percussive, very fast transient. I think there was acoustic guitar panned, double tracked, panned left and right, panned left and right, very wide, very subtle, played softly, but Mick brought up in the mix. Gave the whole thing a very nice feeling. That's sort of what I would refer to as a pre-chorus there, after the first verse. It was struck me a little weird because it felt like the drums were playing a little bit more than they needed to. So, Okay, back into the chorus here for a second time. Nice. Yeah, I'm hearing strumming acoustic guitar. And I think it was just double tracked and panned left, panned right, all the way wide. I love it. And the vocals right in the middle. More vocal overdubs sort of on the rights, or on the sides, making everything feel a little thicker. Okay, so we'll see if this song is structured if they go back to that chorus one more time. That'll be the first song on this album that was structured normally. Or, sorry, I shouldn't say normally, and I know I'm harping on the structuring a lot. That's just sort of my personal thing with music. I really enjoy music that's structured normally, and I know that flies like sort of in the face of a lot of music people who, oh, that's been done so many times before, do something new. Well, I have said a million times on my channel here. Okay, the song got bigger again here. Get some moving stuff on the side. Interesting on the guitars, sort of like almost like a tremolo effect. Sounds very Zeromancer to me. Nice. To finish my thought on the structuring, then I promise I won't go on about it. I always say that I like to be able to anticipate what's coming up in a song. I don't want to listen to a song that's just a different part, a different part, a different part, a different part, a different part done, much like the most recent Gorillaz album. Every one of those tracks just felt like it could have been any part of any other track because there was no discernible individual character within any individual song. It was just a cool part of a song followed by a cool part of a song followed by a cool part of a song, and then the song was over, and then the next song was another cool part of it, another cool part, another cool part. And what you do is you lose any identity to the songs within themselves that way. Okay, so that was nice. I enjoyed that song. We're now on a track that I should be trying to find. Can I look at the album as a whole on here? Oh yeah. Worth less than Dutch marks. Marks to me. Worth less than Dutch marks to me. Okay, this is very cool. Love it. So this is actually track 7. Love this. This is the coolest thing I've heard so far on the album, I would say. I did enjoy that last song a lot, though. That last song a lot. Yes. Will there be any regular vocals to this song, though? They have the cool sort of vocoder part there in the back. Okay. See, I like this a lot because there's not a lot of bands right now doing this sort of style. If you're familiar with a band that does this sort of like more industrial style, but not with just like the thing that I absolutely can't stand about a lot of industrial music is that the vocalist doesn't want to learn how to sing, doesn't want to even attempt to try to sing, doesn't want to try to learn how to scream correctly. So what they do, they put distortion on their voice, turn it up as loud as it will go to the max amount of distortion, and then they just basically it's nonsense. You can't understand what's happening, which is totally fine. I don't care if I don't have to understand what's being said to like a song. That's why I love listening to music in other languages or love listening to metal music, crazy intense metal music. But a band that has a lot of talent and is awesome like this that can use these sort of industrial sounds, the cool big kick. Oh, this is awesome. Yes. Yes, it's almost sort of like imperialistic march. Very cool. If you know of any bands that are like this, that have these cool industrial elements that, but they're still sort of like a heavy band with a great lead singer, let me know in the comments. See, this song is very cool to me, but it's almost more like something that should be on like a soundtrack. Fits on the album though. Sounds really great. Powerman 5000 is a band that can kind of do something like that. Have a song that just kind of sounds cool, is sort of like a neat musical thought, and then they just sort of add a few sort of like vocals that aren't really even necessarily like a verse or a chorus, almost sort of like a sampled part or something like that. Add just a little bit in there to sort of help you follow along with the song. But at the end of the day, the song's just sort of like kind of a cool instrumental with some vocal moments. Very cool. Love the huge synths. Love it. Love the drums, too. The hi-hat sounds real, definitely, but don't know if the cymbals are real, though. I don't know. Love it. This almost sounds like I said, this is like movie soundtrack. Very cool. I think I'm hearing some like string stabs in there, and I love it. Ooh, the guitar on my left would be your right. Very cool, very buzzy sounding, almost like a fly. Love it. Okay, track 8, I believe. Orchestra of Knives. Okay, all right. Love that reverb on the drums. But you can still very clearly hear the kick sound, the origin of the kick, not just the reverb, the kick. The bass sounds great. So the interesting thing about this album is it feels a lot less guitar-driven for sure. Almost all the songs are just basically a drum beat and bass, whether it's synth bass or bass guitar. Just drum, very simple drum pattern. Most of the songs 4 to the floor, and then some bass, and then just like sound effects and flitty sort of sounding things flying around. Very cool. On one hand, that makes it seem a little bit more simplistic or minimalistic almost, though I know that there's a lot of sounds happening. I like it though. Cool background vocals there, overdubs with a little bit of vocoder, I think, on it. Definitely a lot of effects on the vocal overdub. I did read online in a Facebook post that Zeromancer had that Orchestra of Knives refers to the tinnitus that the singer, I believe, or that Kim Lejong had in his has tinnitus and mixed with migraines, which I can relate to. Oh, cool. That's a cool sound. Interesting, okay. Kind of like I was saying earlier, though, like, I don't believe I've heard any guitars on this album, on this song yet, which is nice, but when you have a part like this, it's almost kind of like, why aren't the guitars doing this too? It could be kind of a cool part to have the guitars there. Maybe they'll come in yet, I don't know. On the other hand, not having so many guitars in there is what's giving it more of the sort of electronic industrial feel. So that's cool. I'm not complaining about it in that regard. And I don't expect them to bust out the chugging guitar riffs. That wouldn't necessarily be very Zeromancer-like, so... Love it. There's guitars. Wow, that's cool. Getting very big here. That's a high note for the singer. I don't know if I've heard him like do that before. Da 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 da. It's cool. Okay, that song sort of followed the structuring of the first few songs on the album, where it was like sort of a verse and then a chorus, and then a kind of a bit of a breakdowny bridge almost, and then the chorus and then out. So it's interesting. Power Man 5000 has a whole album that's sort of structured like that, but their songs are not nearly this long. So I like the fact that Oh, I'm getting an ad. While the ad's going, I'll talk. I'm enjoying the album thus far. I think that I'm disappointed with the structuring, and I'll talk about that. I'll save my thoughts for that until after the album, but I like that Zeromancer is giving the songs time to breathe. You know, it's almost hard for me to complain about the structuring because they're giving the songs nice long time for intros, 4 to 8 bar intros, then having the song pick up a little bit and maybe do a little bit of an instrumental section before the vocals come in. I like all that. I think that having the songs have a feeling that they have time to breathe is really nice. But then, like I said, with the structuring comes in, it's like if you're going to have a 4.5 minute long song, why not have a 5 minute long song and repeat the chorus another time? But I'm very happy with the production. I think it sounds much better than their 2 previous albums. And actually, I think their 3 most recent albums before this, dating all the way back to Sinners International, which came out, gosh, way back when, I'm not even sure. It was their album after Zizix. So probably, 2007, 2008? Okay, Stand on Ceremony. Love it. Starting right away with the guitar. Ooh, that sort of pad sound, the synth pad sound in the bad, almost sounds like a horn or something. Distorted, very Zeromancer. Okay, the singer is singing, vocalist is singing much quieter now. Sounds nice, very nice. I love the sound, the extra sounds you're hearing on top of the snare hit. That. It's almost like a metallic sort of sound almost. That guitar is nice. Ooh. Oh, interesting. Interesting just having a tom drum there. Makes it feel a little bit less intense, I feel, than it could feel, but we'll see if it gets a little bigger here. Clock sound effect. Love it. Cool. Is there going to be a verse 2? Or are they just going to do some instrumental stuff for like a minute and then go back into the chorus again? That would be following the structure they've sort of set up and established thus far. I love all these instrumental parts, though. I really do like that, so I don't want to make it seem like I'm not enjoying it. This is nice. I can hear some sort of effect or some sample in the back. Sounds like people talking a little bit. Sample maybe from a movie or something, who knows? I love the sort of sweeping electronic sounds. The building. Really like that. Okay, now we're back to the chorus, and they're not doing the da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da part. They're just more straightforward. Cool. So that almost felt like there could have been a verse over it, but maybe they just didn't put it one there. Okay, we're repeating the chorus again, building. Little echo vocals too. Building, getting a little bigger. Interesting that there's not like crashing cymbals and things like that to make it feel bigger and more like rock. Okay, there's cymbals. Okay, now we're back to the... Okay, cool. Love it. That's nice. So they were letting those elements that I was missing, they come in here at the end to give the song a feeling of building. That's smart songcraft. Oh, repeating the chorus again. Okay, this is the penultimate song. Okay, I believe we're on to the last song here. This is San Zero. Yep, right now. This song only 3 minutes 11 seconds. Okay. The heaviest song on the album. Most like a typical rock song so far we're off to here. Love it. This could be my favorite song on the album. We'll see. I really like the electronic stuff. But having the song be like this so far makes this song stand out. It's cool. Then having all the guitars be low pass or low pass filtered here, so that everything feels like it came down in intensity and volume. Then it's back again when the guitars are there, or when the guitars and everything kicks in with the cymbals. Okay, if that was the chorus, that's instantly interesting. That's the second song in a row, and I believe the third or fourth song on this album where the chorus is just repeating one phrase over and over and over and over. A lot of repeating parts on this album that are like that. Repeat the part a bunch of times and let it build, and then change the arrangement of the song around the repeating vocal part. This is cool. A lot more guitar production and stuff done on this song. Okay, that's That's Orchestra of Knives by Zeromancer. Okay, all right, well. Okay. I know I've said okay a couple times here. I'm trying to stall for time because generally what I like to talk about when I'm doing my album reviews, my reactions, whatnot, is the things that I find to be less subjective and more objective. So, like, I can say with absolute 100% certainty that this album is mixed and mastered way better than I would say probably half the albums in Zeromancer's existing catalog. So with that in mind, to me, that's a sort of a less subjective and more objective thought. I can say that I like the way that they utilize the programmed hi-hats throughout the whole album. Very nice. That to me is a sign of an industrial band or a rock band or metal band that isn't afraid to use electronic elements. Having the core of the band, the drums, bass, guitar, vocals doing their thing, but then the other elements that they add on top of the song, the things that give each of the songs their individual sort of character. When you have a band like Zeromancer that is known as an industrial sort of rock band or an industrial heavy band, then they have those extra elements that they can play around with, and everything fits within the parameters that is Zeromancer. And I love all of that. On this album, I loved the programmed hi-hat. I think that was I didn't even mention it the whole time, but that was something that kind of stood out to me because that's something that I feel has been missing in a lot of music recently, because a band wants to try to keep their drummers playing what he can play on the drums, and they're not adding a lot of drum sounds over the top of that or percussion sounds. Several of the songs had nice aux percussion added to them, like tambourines and shakers and things that were probably played in the studio, and then on top of that having the extra percussive elements of the sort of like the programmed hi-hat, the tick, 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 tick type of stuff, the different patterns and things. I loved all that. So I can say that objectively. However, the reason I sit here disappointed, which I am, is a reason that it makes me feel selfish, because it's just my total personal opinion. And I mentioned it almost throughout that entire album and almost every song, because only one of the songs on the album was structured with a song structure that I enjoy, me personally. So, it's tough because I understand that song structuring is something that most people probably don't really even think of. But the fact that I'm going to probably sit here now for the next 20 minutes and complain about the song structures, I get why someone watching this video would not feel that way. I totally understand that. But at this point, the only thing that I can complain about with that was the song structures. But unfortunately, that's one of the things that this band could do differently than what I like about music that is enough to make me not enjoy it. I hope that sentence made sense. But this album reminded me a little bit of Powerman 5000's, not their most recent album, but their Builders of the Future album. Actually, that was 2 albums ago. But Builders of the Future is a Powerman 5000 album where every single song is structured like this: intro, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, outro. It feels like there is a third of every song missing. And it's hard for me to enjoy that, because every time I listen to one of the songs, I feel like a third of it is missing. And the reason I was kind of bringing up that I know people listen to albums like on repeat a lot, and they put it in their car and they have it in their car for weeks at a time, is because if you listen to a song that you feel is an unsatisfactory length, you probably have no problem hitting the back button and listening to that song again. But for me, there's just something in my brain that tells me I want each song to be a full, complete experience. And I don't think that it's fair to ask every band to do that. So, like, I understand that. This is the album Zeromancer wanted to make. This is the album that they did make. This album is really good, I feel, compared to some of the other stuff in their catalog. But because it's not what I want from them, it's hard for me to say that I like it. And that's a bummer. I really feel bummed about this because I loved the production of the album. And the thing that got me that I didn't like about the album was surprising to me because, for the most part, on all 6 of Zeromancer's previous albums, they have structured their songs in a much more conventional structuring. Being, if you don't know what I'm talking about with the structuring and you just skip to the end of the video, what I'm talking about is I vastly prefer when a song is structured such that it is sort of an intro, verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus 2, bridge, chorus 3, outro. You can have variations of that. You can have a crazy 12-minute long Nightwish song where they have, verse 1, bridge, verse 2, bridge, chorus, verse 3, bridge, totally different separate part, pre-chorus, post-chorus. You can have all these different things. But if you take Ghost Love Score as an example, they come back to the chorus at the end. They finish with something that you are already familiar with and that you weren't necessarily expecting to have come back, but having it come back gives you that sense of closure on the song. And that's what I want when I'm listening to music. I want every song to be its own individual journey, have its own individual character and feeling, but I want it to feel complete within itself. When songs don't do that, I try to think of it more like along the lines of classical music, where you're going from a single piece of music into what might be a track 2 on an album, but it's actually the next part of a whole piece of music, a whole piece of art, if you will. I did a reaction to Yanov's most recent album, De Sorte Carnaval, on my channel here. He's my favorite artist of all time, him and his band Kaiser's Orchestra, also from Norway, the same country that Zeromancer is from. He usually structures his songs the way I've been talking about, that I enjoy them, but on De Sorte Carnaval, the whole thing was meant to feel more like a concept album where one track could flow right into the next track, And so that sort of helped me get over the fact that some of the songs were just like 2 minutes long and they were a really cool drum beat and they were amazing sounding beats and drums and songs, but it didn't feel like a complete song to me. It didn't feel like a complete musical thought. It just felt like a really cool part, a portion of something that could have been much larger. And so I could sort of reconcile myself to that fact, knowing that it was supposed to be considered one sort of larger piece. But with this Zeromancer album, I don't necessarily know that I ever got that feeling. None of the tracks ever ran into the next track. And so that's why I kind of just feel like a jerk sitting here saying that I don't like the album, because I understand that so many people don't have that issue with music. And actually a lot of my friends in the music industry, they are tired of the fact that songs are verse ABA structure. They're tired of the fact that songs are structured the way that they have been for the last 70 years. And I get that. I understand that. That's just not my thinking of it. So it's a huge bummer. I know I just feel like I'm apologizing, trying to but I don't need to apologize. That's how I felt. But so anyway, like I was saying all the way at the beginning of the video, I think that this album could have sounded really bad based on the previous Zeromancer album, Bye Bye Borderlands. This album sounds so much better. The dynamic range of any individual song was really, really nice. I do feel like every song was mostly the same dynamic range. There was one song towards the end where it felt a little bit more ballady. There weren't too many parts of the album where there weren't drums going, where it did feel more like a sort of like a cupola sort of song, like I mentioned off of Eurotrash. Almost nothing felt like a ballad. All the songs felt sort of similar, but there were different sounding songs on the album. In the middle, there were those two songs that had electronic kick drums, and those two songs felt much more electronic as a whole than the other songs on the album that had much more of the acoustic drum kit in there, which gave the song more of a rock feel. And it's the sort of mixing of those elements that give you the industrial feel. So I think that in that regard, the album was really nice. I think that I liked the verses for the most part better than the choruses, I would say, throughout the album. I think that the verses were allowed to be a little bit more simplistic, but then they had cool things happening, swirling around, interesting synths, cool little guitar parts that would come in and go away. Whereas I feel like the choruses for the most part on the album, to me, felt like they were large and big. They weren't excessively dynamic, but they were definitely more dynamic than They were dynamic enough to make me very pleased with how the album was mixed. But the choruses to me felt a little lackluster. I liked that they had more elements to them. There was more sounds happening. There were definitely more layers. But as I mentioned, I think 4, if not 5 of the songs of the 10, when it got to the chorus, it was just this vocal part that was repeated. You're just saying the same sentence and then repeat the same sentence and repeat the same sentence. And that can be very cool. That's another thing Powerman 5000 does all the time. Rob Zombie does that too. They can have whole choruses where the whole chorus is just, hey, hey, come on, let's play. Hey, hey, like the Ramones or something like that. And having a repeating chorus like that is cool. And then what you do is you take and you keep those elements that are repeating, and then you add other elements around that, and you sort of craft the song around that. But you can do that a little too much, I think, and that kind of is the feeling that I got here. The last 2 songs on the album were both, it gets to the chorus, and it's just the singer shouting the words and repeating that same sentence like 8 times, and while that's happening, the music is basically doing the same thing, and then a few more elements are added to make it feel like it's building. And that's cool, but then after the first chorus would go away, you just had this cool part where the penultimate song on the album felt like it was verse 1, chorus, and then where verse 2 would go, it felt more like a bridge, but instead of it being a different, like a third part of the song, it felt like the first verse again with no verse over the top of it. So just some like instrumental noodling, but there wasn't like a solo or anything happening. It was just, different elements kind of flying in and out. And then it went back to the chorus, and then it repeated the chorus, and then it went away for a second, and then it repeated the chorus again. So technically they did the chorus 3 times in that song, but there was really nothing in between it to separate it. And when you repeat something that many times in a 4.5-minute song, it can be a little too much, And I did mention in that there was a sort of a more industrial feeling song that I actually liked the feeling of a lot in there, but I said it felt more like it belonged on like a movie soundtrack or something like that. The reason I bring that up and mention it that it sounds like a movie soundtrack is because, if you have an instrumental song that has a little bit of vocals in it, you can have the vocal part being like sort of like a repeating part or something that's just kind of going over and over, because at that point it's not really a vocal part. It's more of a sample or something that was thrown in, and having the rest of the song be mostly mostly instrumental, it gives the whole song a bit of a different feeling. But when you have a song that is more of a normal song, if you will, and it still has this repeating part that just repeats over and over, it just is a little bit too much. The first song really blew me away because it wasn't what I was expecting at all, with all the tom hits and just the drum kit being played. And then the vocal rhythm was this really cool sort of like groovy vocal rhythm. It got me excited. And I was like, okay, this is really has potential to be really cool. And I liked the way it was mixed. And then the rest of the album just kind of happened. And I know I've only heard it the once, and I will definitely listen to the album more, but there's not one song that really stuck out to me that much. I will say was it Terminal Love? Is that what the name of the song was? The song that was, I don't know if they had a single so much. And I didn't listen to anything before this, no singles or anything like that. But the song Terminal Love it felt like the most like a standard song. And so I would say that I liked that one probably the most. Mourners was one that I thought was actually interesting because that one I thought felt sort of happy and hopeful. And that was the first one, I believe, to have the sort of four to the floor electronic kick feel. I loved that song. I liked that one a lot. They didn't structure it the way I wanted them to, but for the most part, they structured it in a way that I can kind of get behind because at least they did go back to the chorus again. But most of the songs, and this is weird to say because normally when I say this, it's because a song is too short. But in this case, I don't know if that's true because most of the songs were like between 4 and 4.5 minutes long. And to me, that's a good length for a song. I've heard great songs that were under 3 minutes long, but they just felt like they were a little bit faster and the individual parts of the song were a little bit shorter. So when I hear a song that's like a Powerman 5000 song, for example, that's too short to me, it's missing the third of its song. What it feels like it's missing to me is the bridge. So when I hear a song like this, where like one of the Zeromancer songs, where it feels like there's a little bit of an intro that maybe was like a double or quadruple length intro, and then some drums and everything kicks in, and then there's a verse, and the verse is like a double length verse. Then you get to the chorus, and the chorus is a double length chorus. And then the next part of the song, which usually seemed to be a bridge or maybe going back to a verse again, and that's a double length, and then you get to the chorus and it's a double length or quadruple length chorus. You're still getting a long song, but it still feels to me like it's missing a part. I guess what it comes down to is I really like when I'm listening to a song and about 3/4 of the way through the song changes a little bit. Doesn't necessarily have to be a complete right turn, go into a different genre of music or anything, but the song changes a little bit. There's a little bit of variation. And then it comes back to the familiar, back to the chorus, and it gets a little bit bigger and you end on the crescendo. The song, builds and ends on a really good note that you're familiar with and you feel satisfied with. And I understand the idea of creating art that's not necessarily meant to satisfy you, that's meant to be jarring or shocking. So I understand that some artists would make a song and say, hey, this is meant to end dissonantly. You're not supposed to feel satisfied when you listen to this because the intent of the song was unease or whatever, what have you. So I understand that, but that doesn't mean it's not disappointing to me. If that's what Zeromancer was going for here with their songs, which I don't think that's the case because they did go back to the chorus. It just felt like almost in this case, the bridges were gone. I don't know. It's really hard thing for me to kind of articulate, and I know I'm just talking circles around myself, but that's unfortunately the thing I'm going to take away from this album is I didn't like it overall because the structuring of the songs, that's the only thing I can complain about. I think the vocals were great. The vocal melodies were great. I think there were a lot of moments that made me smile because it felt like I was listening to Zeromancer. And there's not a ton of bands out there that you can say, show me this little instrumental part of a song that sounds like that particular band. But Zeromancer was one of those bands. They have a unique and distinct style. And I was wondering if that was going to be lost over the last 8 years. And it wasn't. It was still there. The Zeromancer feeling was still there. But that's, I want to feel satisfied with each song. And then I want each song on each album to be satisfying as well, if that makes sense. Like I want all the music that I listen to be perfect. And I want everything to be the greatest thing I've ever heard. And I understand that it's not going to be that way. And I also understand that what's perfect for me is not what's perfect for you. And that's why I'm not saying that this album is bad. I would recommend this album to anyone that likes industrial music, anyone that liked sort of new metal stuff, maybe from the early 2000s. Maybe there was a lot more 90s influence I felt on this album, especially with the tone of the guitars and everything. There was a lot of Depeche Mode influence I could hear. I love all of those things. I love all of those elements. And I understand that they weren't making the album for me. They were making the album for themselves, and that's great. So that's why I'm not saying the album is bad. All I can say is that I am disappointed with the album, and it leaves me a little frustrated because I don't really understand why so many artists are deciding to make a song that, to me, feels too short. And I guess that's the end-all, be-all of that. I'm trying to think. I really like the drum sounds, like I mentioned while I was listening. I think the acoustic drum sounds, the drums that sounded like a drum kit in a studio, sounded great. There was a lot of dynamics within the drums. The cymbals for a lot of the album felt like they weren't real cymbals to me, so I don't know if it was someone playing an electronic drum kit and then they just picked really good sounding samples. That doesn't take any value away from me at all. In fact, I do know that it's hard to make an album like that, and the fact that it sounded so good, and I do believe that the drums sounded real, tells me that they did a good job however they did it. I think the bass guitar sounded great. I think when you have a bass guitar mixed with some synth bass, that can be a tough thing to navigate without having one get in the way of the other, and I never felt that. There were a lot of very cool, like, stabby synths that kind of sat on the top of everything as, like, lead synths. Loved all of that. That is par the course for Zeromancer. The vocals were fantastic. The singer, whose name is Alex, I believe, he did a fantastic job. His vocals sound identical to the way they did, whatever, at this point, when did Clone Your Lover come out? 2000, so 21 years ago. His vocals sound identical today. Fantastic vocals, really good singing. There were 2 songs where I really noticed the singing because they were going up to a note that I don't think was too high for the singer, but was just singing a little bit higher than I think that I've heard him do before. That was really impressive. So let's end this album reaction and review on a high note like that. I think the album was good. I can say pretty definitively that unless I listen to this album again and I get something from it that I didn't get this time, which definitely could happen, and has happened to me before with albums I've listened to during reactions. Unless I listen to this album again and it really surprises me and I get something out of it that I didn't this time, there's no way this album is going to make it on my top 12 albums of the year list. And that's a little disappointing to me, but I always go into every album that I hear for the first time thinking this could be the best album of the year, and I want it to be the best album of the year. I want it to be so hard for me to make that list that every album could be a top 12 album of the year, but it is not the case. That's not the case with a lot of albums. A lot of albums have been disappointing this year, and unfortunately to me, for the reasons I've talked about, Orchestra of Knives by Zeromancer is a disappointing album. So thank you very much for watching, though. I hope I didn't make anybody too mad by talking about structuring. I feel like that's all I talk about on my channel. And maybe I'm not the right person to do reactions to music if I'm just not enjoying this style of music where music is headed. Who knows? But I still love music more than anything else in this world. And as I always say, go out, find some new music, and share it with people you think might like it. And even more importantly than that, share it with people that might not like it, because you never know, you might convert them over to becoming a fan of the band. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you next time in the next video I'm going to do, which I think is going to be the new Frost album that came out this year. Progressive electronic band Frost. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you very much.